Alright, so think about it like this, because the easiest way to really understand why people keep talking about Maurice Sam and Pearl Watts is not by overthinking it, but by simply observing how their connection plays out naturally over time, and why it keeps pulling people back in again and again. Because at this point, it's no longer about one viral clip or one trending moment, it's about a continuous flow of interactions that all carry the same energy, and that energy is what makes everything stand out. Because it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel exaggerated, it just feels steady, like something that exists whether people are watching or not. And that's the part that really gets people talking, because in the entertainment space where everything is often amplified for attention, this kind of calm, consistent connection feels different, and people can sense that difference immediately, and once they sense it they become curious, because they want to understand what exactly is creating that feeling and why it keeps showing up the same way every single time these two are seen together. And when you start paying closer attention, you begin to notice that it's not about big dramatic actions, it's about the little things, the kind of little things that usually go unnoticed, unless you're really looking, like how comfortable they seem standing next to each other, like there's no awkwardness, no hesitation, just a natural flow, like they already understand each other's space and energy, and that kind of comfort is not something you can easily fake, because it comes from familiarity, it comes from time, it comes from a level of connection that builds gradually, and that's exactly why people are convinced that whatever is going on between them didn't just start overnight, it's something that has been developing quietly, and now it's reaching a point where it's becoming visible to everyone, and that visibility is what's making fans react so strongly, because they feel like they are witnessing something that has depth, something that has history, even if that history hasn't been fully shared publicly. And another way to break it down is by looking at how they communicate without words, because sometimes the strongest connections are the ones that don't need constant talking to prove themselves. And with these two you can see moments where a simple look or a small gesture says more than any long explanation could, and those are the moments that people replay in their minds, because they feel authentic, they feel unplanned, and that authenticity is what builds trust with the audience, because when people believe what they are seeing they become more invested, and that investment is what turns casual viewers into active followers who start paying attention to every new detail and trying to connect it with everything they've already seen. And that's how the whole story keeps growing, because it's not being driven by one single event, it's being built piece by piece through repeated experiences that all point in the same direction, and that direction is what people are trying to define. Because even though nothing has been officially labeled, the pattern itself is strong enough to suggest that there is something meaningful happening, and that's where the excitement comes from, because people love trying to figure things out, especially when the clues are subtle and spread out over time. And that's exactly what's happening here, because every new appearance adds another clue, another layer, another reason for people to keep watching and discussing and sharing their opinions. And when you look at the way their presence affects the online space, it becomes even clearer, because every time they show up together the reaction is immediate. People start commenting, people start analyzing, people start comparing new moments with old ones, and trying to see if anything has changed or evolved, and most of the time what they find is that the core energy remains the same, which only strengthens the idea that this connection is genuine, because consistency over time is one of the strongest indicators of authenticity, and that's something that can't be easily maintained if it's not real, because eventually forced interactions start to feel repetitive or unnatural. But in this case, the opposite is happening. The more they appear together, the more natural it seems, and that progression is what keeps the bond shining again, because instead of fading it's becoming clearer, more defined, more noticeable, and that's why even people who were initially unsure are starting to pay closer attention, because it's becoming harder to ignore the pattern, and when something becomes that consistent, it starts to feel intentional, not in a staged way, but in a personal way, like two people choosing to remain connected and comfortable around each other regardless of the attention surrounding them. And that choice is what people respect, because it shows a level of authenticity that goes beyond public expectations. It shows that whatever is happening is not just for show, it's something that exists independently of the audience, and that independence is what gives it strength, because it means the connection is not dependent on validation, it's not dependent on reactions, it's simply there and people are just lucky enough to witness it, and that perspective changes how the whole situation is viewed, because instead of seeing it as something created for entertainment, it starts to feel like a real-life connection that happens to be visible. And that's a big difference because it shifts the focus from speculation to appreciation. People stop trying to force answers and start enjoying the moments for what they are, and that enjoyment is what keeps the conversation positive and engaging, because instead of arguments about what is or isn't happening, it becomes a shared experience where everyone is reacting to the same energy and finding their own meaning in it, and that shared experience is what keeps the story alive, because it creates a sense of community around the observation of their bond. And when you think about it, that's actually one of the most powerful things about this whole situation, because it's not just about Maurice, Sam and Pearl. It's also about how their connection is bringing people together in conversation, creating discussions, creating reactions, creating engagement in a way that feels organic and not forced. And that organic growth is what makes everything more sustainable, because it's not based on hype, it's based on genuine interest, and genuine interest tends to last longer, because it's not easily replaced by the next trending topic. And that's why this bond keeps shining again, because it's not just another moment that will disappear after a few days. It's something that keeps renewing itself every time they interact, every time they are seen together, every time a new detail emerges. And that cycle of renewal is what keeps people coming back, because there's always something new to notice, something new to discuss, something new to interpret. And even when nothing major happens, the absence of new information becomes a topic on its own, because people start wondering why things are quiet, what might be happening behind the scenes, and that curiosity keeps the story alive even during slower moments. And that's how you know something has real impact, because it doesn't rely on constant updates to stay relevant. It maintains interest even in silence, and that kind of presence is very rare, because it shows that the connection itself is strong enough to hold attention without needing constant reinforcement. And when you combine all these elements, the natural chemistry, the consistent energy, the subtle communication, the strong audience reaction, and the ability to maintain interest over time, you start to see the full picture of why people keep saying that the bond between Maurice, Sam and Pearl feels real, and why it continues to shine again and again, because it's not built on one single factor, it's built on a combination of qualities.